Hello and welcome to part 4 of my look at the history of and along the U8 U-Bahn line. If you missed parts 1, 2 and 3, don't worry, you can start here if you're particularly interested in the Kreuzberg and Neukölln sections of the U8, but you can also go back and watch the others if you want to. They do make more sense if you watch them in order. Part 1 is a look at the construction of the line, part 2 is the beginning of our tour down the line from Wittenau down to Bernauerstraße, and part 3 is our look from Rosenthalerplatz down to Heinrich-Heine-Straße, and there's a couple of escape stories really throughout. No escape stories in this one though, I think we covered that. So in this one, we're going to cover the section from Moritzplatz down to Hermannstraße, but before we do that, you're maybe thinking, who the hell is this guy? My name is Johnny Whitlam. I've been a tour guide in Berlin since 2010. Since 2023, I've been making videos all about Berlin, although most of them are on the old vertical video platforms there if you want to go and check them out. I'm relatively new here on YouTube, but I'm really enjoying it and I've got some really encouraging feedback so far. So if you're one of those people that left me a nice message or comment, thank you so much. It really has given me a nice boost. Anyways, let's get started with the history. And so we should start with Moritzplatz station, but we've got to get there from Heinrich-Heine-Straße first, and that means crossing over the Berlin Wall.
And that means that we see our line of the Berlin Wall on the ground again. So East Berlin and Heinrich-Heine-Straße station are that way, and Moritzplatz over in West Berlin is that way. And this street was actually open during the Cold War. It was one of the border crossing points. There's some information and photographs over here that explain all of it.
Didn't I do a great job of modeling those photos? I think I should be a model. Moritzplatz station, this kind of controversial station in a way. When you look at a geographic map of the U-Bahn, it's way out there over on the left side. It's kind of like the line makes a whole Umweg, as the Germans would say, a diversion to get there. Why is that? There is a rumor, a myth, a legend that I have told a couple of times about this, which the more I look into it, I don't think is true. So just to wrap it up quickly, the U8 will eventually go further south to Hermannplatz. There's a big department store there. Karstadt was a great big deal in the 1920s. There's another department store brand, the Wertheims, who supposedly get jealous of how much business is brought to Karstadt by the U-Bahn, and so they pay millions to have the line moved. And yeah, the more I look into it, just the less I believe it's true. Karstadt doesn't open until too late for the Wertheims to have any kind of data. They may have had a hunch, okay, they're good at business. But the real reason that I don't think it's true is that, okay, they did start building the U8 in this area in 1915. And, well, let's have a look at the original plan.
And so the line was originally going to run here beneath Dresdener Straße down to a station called Oranienplatz right here, where it would then go beneath the canal. Weirdly, they did build a good section of the tunnel and the station, which are still there, but it's the canal that isn't. In fact, when you walk through the park that used to be the canal, you can still see one of the bridges that would have crossed over the water right here at Waldemarstraße.
So when I was saying canal, I meant Luisenstadt Canal, and I think that's the reason why the U8 was actually moved. That and something else, we'll see. The reason I think this canal is the problem is that when the U8 construction is reawakened in the mid to late 1920s, the Luisenstadt Canal is stinky. It's no longer really in use. The water doesn't move. It stinks, and the Berliners want to get rid of it, and so they start to fill it in. Well, if there's all this filling in going in on top, and you're trying to dig an U-Bahn station and a tunnel beneath or work on one, that's a little bit of a problem. The other problem is that there was a proposed line that was never dug, another U-Bahn line, that was supposed to go from the district of Moabit, so kind of northwest of what is now Hauptbahnhof, and Treptow. And that would have crossed through the Oranienplatz as well. So when this U8 project is reawakened, they have to deal with all sorts of things that are changing. Will this other line come here? Will the canal be filled in? What's happening with that? How does that change everything? Do you know what? Let's make it easier. Let's move just a block away to Moritzplatz. It's my opinion that big decisions like this are probably usually made because of, yeah, it's either easier or cheaper or ideally both. Did the Wertheims pay to have the line moved? I mean, stranger things have happened. It could be true. I actually, sadly, after telling the story in that Instagram reel, I sadly don't think it's true anymore. But hey, I only know as much as you do.
As for what happened to the two department stores, well, those are two distinct, different stories. The Wertheim family owned loads of big, successful department stores across Berlin, and they were dispossessed of them in the mid-1930s through a process that the Nazis called Aryanization, taking successful businesses out of Jewish-owned hands and handing them over to people that they then approved of. As for the physical store here on Moritzplatz, it was completely destroyed in World War II and has never been rebuilt.
The Karstadt store, on the other hand, did reopen and is actually still open today, although in a much sadder form. We're going to talk about that when we get there, when we get down to Hermannplatz on our U8 safari. In order to get there, we have to continue from Moritzplatz down to Kottbusser Tor. And so we get to Kottbusser Tor, one of the more infamous stations along the U8, again, because a lot of addicts tend to use this section as a place to hang out. The original U-Bahn that came here, above ground, came here in 1902. The U8 then followed several decades later, end of the 20s, beginning of the 30s. And that would have been a really exciting time to be in this area. Kreuzberg at this time was really a workers' district. This is where loads and loads of factory workers or manufacturing workers of any kind would have lived. They would have lived in pretty cramped and crowded conditions. If you look at some of the older buildings in this area, maybe you've been inside them, you've seen they've got wonderful tall ceilings, these very nice apartments. Those would have been full. You're talking, what might be someone's nice big spacious living room today would have had several bunk beds inside. In some cases, those beds would have been rented out for 8 hours at a time. Being a densely populated part of central Berlin meant that this place was very unfortunate during the Second World War. You only have to take a quick walk around Kottbusser Tor today to see that most of the buildings are post-war, which means a lot of the buildings here were just bombed and completely destroyed. And as Kreuzberg changed visually, it changed demographically as well. What was once the center of the city became the edge of West Berlin. The Berlin Wall went around Kreuzberg on 3 sides. And so immigrants started to move here because it was the cheap and undesirable part of town. It's where, people that were on the fringes of society either moved to by choice to be with people like them or moved to out of necessity. And when we talk about immigration to West Berlin and West Germany, it means that essentially we're talking about the guest worker program, which originally in the 1950s was a program for Greek and Italian immigrants to move to West Germany and really do manual work that a lot of Germans didn't want to do. The program, though, was opened to Turks in the 1960s, and I guess if you know anything about Berlin, you know that there's a huge Turkish population here, and Kottbusser Tor is seen really by many people as the center of that. It's got the nickname Little Istanbul. And so the name guest worker is problematic because, well, guests leave, and clearly if you walk around Berlin today, Turks didn't leave. Turks settled here. Their families moved over. The program was changed such that they could do that they could settle here. And only until 2024, though, there's been a big issue surrounding citizenship, where dual citizenship between Germany and Turkey just simply was not allowed. And this means that, historically speaking, West Germany and now reunified Germany's Turkish demographic has always had a lack of political representation. Still, it's a really fun place to go and explore, one of my favorite places to show people when they're visiting Berlin as well. And it's a place that, when I first came here, I really fell in love with. It's one of the places that makes Berlin so unique, and it's a place that, despite its big problems, I do really love. Speaking of big problems, though, we should move on to the next station, Schönleinstraße. Welcome to Schönleinstraße. Words that no Berliner ever wants to hear because, this is the stinkiest of the stations, or at least it used to be when I lived around here, 2018, 2019. I used to walk to Kottbusser Tor because it was nicer. That tells you something. Schönleinstraße, it's quite plain. It was built very quick and cheap because essentially the U8 project was just dragging, and it was the local government of Neukölln that took over. And so Schönleinstraße does have actually quite an honor for the U8. It is joint with Hermannplatz and Bodenstraße as the first station on the line to be opened, and that was on the 17th of July, 1927. It was only a really short line at that point, right? 3 stations, but it opened. Schönleinstraße did it. Let's move on to Hermannplatz.
I've always had a bit of a soft spot for this area because, well, when I first moved to Berlin, I moved to this area and I ended up living around here on and off for about 10 years. So yeah, shout out to the 20 plus people that, not at the same time, I lived with in that flat. If you know, you know.
So the big deal with Hermannplatz was the Karstadt department store opened in 1929. This is one of the most exciting stores that ever existed in the Weimar era of Berlin. Inside were 24 escalators that could take shoppers to 9 different floors with 72,000 square meters of retail space. However, the coolest part for me is the roof, which had 4,000 square meters of terrace with 500 seats. Live music would be played, you would get great views over the city, and on either side of the terrace were these 2 towers, 57 meters tall, adorned with electric lights. It really showed off just how modern and exciting Berlin was becoming. But what was a sign of joy, decadence, fun, and hedonism in the Weimar era became the scene of chaos, sadness, and despair during the Battle of Berlin, right at the end of the Second World War. It was on the 23rd of April 1945 that the SS Nordland Division and Wehrmacht troops entered the building and started to loot what was left. Now, at this point, the great big cellar beneath the building had been used as a place of refuge by local Berliners who already had electricity and water cut off, as the Soviets had already entered the city at this point. But it's what would happen the next day that would be absolutely catastrophic.
On April 24th, the northern side of the building here caught fire. There were about 500 people inside, civilians, mostly women and children, who then fled through that original U-Bahn connection down to what is now the U7 platform. After this, the building collapsed, and it's estimated that 500 people that were still inside looting the building were killed. As to what caused the collapse, nobody knows for sure. The building was probably hit by Soviet shells, but there's also a fair chance that the 2 great big towers that used to be up here were deemed as a threat by the Nazis. If the Soviets could get their hands on them, they would have this great vantage point over Berlin.
Editing Johnny here. I missed out a sentence. Vantage point, yes. The thinking then is that because it could be useful to the Soviets, it's likely that the SS blew it up. Whether or not that happened, well, let's watch.
So both of these make sense, and opinion seems to be quite split among historians as to what really happened. Either way, the vast majority of this building was destroyed in World War II. Very little of the original building is left. In fact, you have to go down to the south side where you can see some of the original shell limestone facade, but it's really a shadow of its former self. For us, it's time to continue further south. And so we're coming towards the end of our U-Bahn safari. We've got 3 more stations to go, and we're going to do them all together because, yeah, you'll see why. So Bodenstrasse is the next one, and it's had a renovation in recent years. Looks very nice, a lot of historic photos inside. Cool. Little medal for Bodenstrasse because it's part of the OG 3-station U8 that opened in 1927 when it was the southernmost point, a title that didn't hold for very long because in 1928 Leinestrasse was added to the line, and again, one of the more plain stations. But Leinestrasse was the southernmost point of the line right the way until the 1990s, which was never the plan. Go back to part 1 when we looked at just the idea of the U8, let alone the construction. It was supposed to connect 2 parts of the Ringbahn, Gesundbrunnen in the north, check, done, 1930, and then Hermannstraße or somewhere in Neukölln in the south, and no check, not done until 96, I believe. So what's the deal with that? Hermannstraße station was actually, fairly well built and ready to go by 1932, but then in 1933, the bad guys come to power and they just don't prioritize the U-Bahn. In fact, they used the original kind of construction of Hermannstraße station as a public air raid shelter during World War II. There used to be signs inside the station that, were original bunker signs, but I think that they're gone now. Because, yeah, if they are still here, I can't find them. I've seen some photos online with these green tiles, and they're kind of set into there, but yeah, I walked around the whole place looking like an idiot by myself, and I reckon they've been removed or covered up in a renovation, so there we go. And why settle for looking like an idiot in public when you can look like an idiot in your own home and also in front of thousands of people? Hopefully you've enjoyed our look down the U8. That really is the end. Hermannstraße station opens, the U8 moves on, and I guess, yeah, there are plans to extend the line. Not out the south, though, but out the north. But yeah, at the moment, I just don't really, I don't trust it when they say that there are plans in Berlin. It takes really a long time. That's going to be the end of U-Bahn history for a while. I know that people really like the U-Bahn stuff, but I don't want to be the U-Bahn, S-Bahn train guy. I want to move on to other things. And so, yeah, what the next video is, I don't think I should say here in case I end up basically messing up and not making it, doing a good job, but I'm already writing it, I'm already working on this stuff. If you want more from me, again, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram, where I try to put out
at the moment, one video every week because I'm working on this stuff. You can, especially if you follow me on Instagram, by the way, that's where I announce my pay what you want tours. I'm working on a section of my website where those will be so that anyone can just kind of come and sign up and join. Let's see. Oh, and then there's the podcast. So if you're interested in all things World War II, Series 3 of the podcast is starting soon. That's called History Flakes, the Berlin History Podcast. And I do that with my friend Pip. All the links are down here below the video. So that's it from me. I hope that you've enjoyed the U8 series. If you have, please, please, please write comments beneath and like it and share it. One of my goals with YouTube is actually to start making money with YouTube, which I'm quite close to. You need 1,000 subscribers, done, but you also need 4,000 watch hours, and not done. But you can help either by watching right to the end or sharing it with other people that you think might be interested. So, thank you for doing that in advance, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.